The sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of the Millfield County Courthouse as Catherine Morgan gripped her daughter's small hand. The courthouse's imposing Georgian columns loomed above them, silent witnesses to countless lives changed within those brick walls. At 35, Catherine's face already showed the fine lines of someone who had weathered storms. The premature streaks of silver threading through her dark brown hair told a story of grief still fresh. "Are you sure about this, Mom?" 8-year-old Lily looked up, her eyes reflecting the same green as her late father's. Catherine squeezed her daughter's hand and managed a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "This is our chance for a new beginning, sweetie." She brushed a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is start over." 6 months earlier, Catherine's husband, David, had fallen from scaffolding at a construction site. The accident had taken mere seconds. A safety harness improperly secured, a momentary lapse in attention, and her entire world had collapsed. The modest insurance payout barely covered the funeral and 3 months of mortgage payments. When she'd reached out to David's wealthy family for help, they had turned their backs, accusing her of marrying their son for money. Now, with foreclosure looming, Catherine had driven 2 hours to this sleepy town with the last of their savings and a desperate plan. Inside the courthouse, the property tax auction was already underway. The room smelled of furniture polish and old papers. Catherine settled Lily with a coloring book in a back row and approached the registration desk. "Lot 42, abandoned storefront on Maple Street," the auctioneer announced, his voice echoing in the half-empty room. "Delinquent property taxes amount to $99. Do I hear 100 ears?" Catherine's heart raced. The listing had caught her eye because of the absurdly low starting bid. Even with their meager savings, she could afford it. But surely there was a catch. Properties didn't sell for the price of a family dinner. The room remained silent. $99 going once. Catherine raised her hand, almost without thinking. $99 going twice. Sold to the lady in the blue sweater for $99. A collective murmur rippled through the small crowd. Catherine stood frozen in place, unable to believe what had just happened. Had she just bought a building for less than $100? As she signed the paperwork, the elderly clerk leaned forward. "Strange business with the Holloway place," he whispered, his breath smelling of coffee and peppermints. Family seemed mighty surprised it went to auction at all. Always paid their taxes prompt, for generations. Seems like someone dropped the ball. He handed her a ring of brass keys. "Congratulations, ma'am. It's all yours now." Have you ever taken a leap of faith that changed everything? Share your story in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this tale of mystery and new beginnings, hit that subscribe button to stay with us for the journey ahead. The late afternoon sun painted Maple Street in amber hues as Catherine parked in front of her new purchase. Maple Street was Millfield's historic district, a row of century-old storefronts with wrought iron benches and old-fashioned lampposts. Number 42 stood between a bakery and a bookstore, its red brick facade weathered but solid. "Holloway's General Store," Lily read from the faded wooden sign above the entrance. "Is it really ours now, Mom?" Catherine nodded, turning the largest key in the lock. The door swung open with a protesting creak. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams that streamed through grimy windows, illuminating the empty space like something out of a forgotten dream. "It's like a fairy tale place," Lily exclaimed, her voice echoing in the emptiness. The interior had been stripped of merchandise, but the bones remained. Oak floors that had darkened with age, tin ceiling panels embossed with intricate patterns, and an ornate cherrywood counter that must have once displayed penny candies and household necessities. A broad staircase at the back led to a second floor. Catherine moved to the large front windows and wiped a circle in the dust. Light flooded in, creating patterns on the floor. She smiled, her first genuine smile since David's death. The space was perfect for what she had envisioned, an art studio and cafe where people could create, connect, and find community. Before David's death, she had been an art teacher, nurturing creativity in others. Perhaps here she could reclaim that part of herself that had been buried alongside her husband. "We could put tables here," Catherine murmured. "Easels by the windows for the best light. Coffee and pastry served at the old counter." As Lily explored the corners of the first floor, Catherine climbed the creaking staircase. The second floor was divided into several rooms, a perfect apartment for them. She wandered through the dusty spaces, mentally placing their meager belongings, already imagining this place's home. At the end of a narrow hallway, however, she encountered something unexpected. Unlike the other doors in the building, simple wooden affairs with glass knobs, this door was made of solid oak, at least 4 inches thick. It had no visible knob or keyhole, just a smooth, polished surface that seemed strangely newer than its surroundings, though covered in the same layer of dust. Catherine ran her fingers along the wood, searching for some mechanism to open it. The door felt oddly warm beneath her touch, as though it had been sitting in direct sunlight, though the hallway was dim. When she pressed her ear against it, she thought she heard a faint humming, like distant voices or wind through a cavern. "Mom?" Lily's voice startled her. "What's behind there?" "I don't know, sweetie. It doesn't seem to open." Catherine tried each key on the ring, but none fit any lock she could find. The door remained stubbornly closed, a silent sentinel guarding whatever lay beyond. A knock at the front door interrupted their exploration. Catherine descended the stairs to find an elderly woman standing on the threshold, holding a plate of chocolate muffins still warm from the oven. "Thought I saw lights on," the woman said with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "I'm Grace Miller from the bakery next door. When I saw someone had finally bought this place, I had to come welcome you properly." Grace was in her late 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp, observant eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses. She wore a flour-dusted apron over a floral dress, looking every bit the quintessential small-town baker. But there was something keen and assessing in her gaze as it swept over Catherine and lingered on Lily. "Catherine Morgan," Catherine introduced herself, accepting the muffins gratefully. "And this is my daughter Lily." "Lovely to meet you both," Grace said, bending slightly to Lily's level. "Those muffins are my special recipe, chocolate with raspberry centers. Been baking them for 40 years. As they talked, Catherine shared her plans for an art studio and cafe. Grace's eyes lit up with interest, but when Catherine mentioned they'd explored upstairs, including the mysterious door, something in the older woman's expression changed, a flicker of tension, quickly masked. "You found it already," Grace murmured, her voice suddenly lower. "The door that won't open." A chill ran through Catherine despite the warm evening. "You know about it?" Grace nodded slowly. "That door's been there since before I moved in next door, 40 years ago. And do you know, no one's ever managed to open it." She glanced around as if checking they were alone. "The woman who was here before you, Claire Reynolds, she was fascinated by that door, spent months studying it, making drawings, measurements." "What happened to her?" Catherine asked, already sensing the answer wouldn't be pleasant. "She died," Grace said simply. 10 years ago. Official reports said it was a stroke. But Claire was only 42 and healthy as a horse." She lowered her voice further. "The strange thing was, right after she died, all her notes about the door disappeared. Every drawing, every measurement she'd taken. Someone cleaned out everything related to it." Lily pressed closer to Catherine's side, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "Claire was an art teacher too," Grace added, watching Catherine's face carefully. "And a gifted painter, had a studio downtown where she taught classes." Catherine felt a strange connection to this woman she'd never met. Another artist, another teacher, who had stood in this very spot, intrigued by the same mystery. Do you think her death had something to do with the door? Grace's lips pressed into a thin line. I don't know, dear, but in a town this small, coincidences are rare as snow in July. As Grace prepared to leave, she hesitated at the threshold. Catherine, be careful with your curiosity. Some things in this town, some families, they don't take kindly to outsiders asking questions. After Grace left, Catherine put Lily to bed on a makeshift pallet of blankets in what would become their living room. She sat beside her daughter, stroking her hair until her breathing deepened into sleep. The building creaked and settled around them, speaking in the secret language of old structures. Catherine was just locking up for the night when headlights swept across the front windows. A sleek black sedan pulled up outside, its engine purring like a predatory cat. A woman emerged, tall, slender, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that whispered of wealth and influence. Her silver-streaked dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, emphasizing sharp cheekbones and calculating eyes. Catherine Morgan? The woman's voice was cool and authoritative. Catherine nodded, instantly on guard. I'm Victoria Holloway. My family has owned this property for 3 generations. Her gaze swept dismissively over the storefront. There's been a mistake with the tax auction. We'd like to rectify it immediately. I have the deed, Catherine said, straightening her spine. The sale was legal. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm prepared to offer you $5,000 for the building. That's 50 times what you paid this afternoon. The sum made Catherine's breath catch, enough to rent a decent apartment for months, to give her time to find a teaching position, to create stability for Lily. But something in Victoria's demeanor raised her hackles. I'm sorry, but it's not for sale. We're planning to make this our home. Victoria's expression hardened. Ms. Morgan, you don't understand what you're getting involved in. For your daughter's sake, I strongly advise you to reconsider my offer. Her eyes flicked meaningfully toward the second floor. Some doors are better left locked forever. As the sedan pulled away, Catherine locked the front door with trembling hands. Victoria Holloway hadn't mentioned the door specifically, but her warning was unmistakable. Somehow she knew Catherine had found it, and she was willing to pay a small fortune to ensure it remained unopened. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, autumn painting the trees in fiery colors. Catherine enrolled Lily in the local elementary school, then headed straight to the Millfield County Records office. The building was a squat brick structure with windows so dirty they barely deserved the name. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Catherine approached the desk, where an elderly woman sorted through papers with liver-spotted hands. Helen Baker, the woman introduced herself, peering over half-moon glasses. Been keeping these records for 47 years. What can I help you with, dear? I'm researching a property I just purchased, Catherine explained. The old Holloway store on Maple Street. Helen's hand stilled. The Holloway place? That's quite a purchase for an outsider. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What specifically are you looking for? Information about the previous occupant, Claire Reynolds. I understand she died about 10 years ago. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Helen's expression closed like a book slammed shut. That was a sad business. Claire was a lovely woman, talented artist. Such a waste. She shuffled through a filing cabinet and extracted a thin folder. Here's the official report. Not much to it, I'm afraid. Catherine scanned the document. As Grace had said, the cause of death was listed as acute cerebrovascular accident, a stroke. The report was brief to the point of terseness, with no indication of unusual circumstances. But what caught Catherine's eye was the date. Exactly 3 days after Claire had last been seen at the store, according to a witness statement. And at the bottom of the page, the signature of the attending physician, Dr. Richard Holloway. Victoria's brother? Catherine asked, pointing to the name. Helen nodded. The Holloways have been pillars of this community for generations. Richard's the town doctor, semi-retired now. Their grandfather built half the buildings downtown. When Helen stepped away to retrieve additional records, Catherine quickly snapped photos of the documents with her phone. Something wasn't right about Claire's death, and the Holloway family's desperation to reclaim the building only deepened her suspicions. Have you ever felt drawn to a mystery that seemed dangerous, yet impossible to ignore? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you're captivated by Catherine's journey, hit that like button and subscribe for the next installment. Catherine spent the afternoon exploring Millfield's downtown, asking subtle questions about the Holloway family and their property. Most people were polite but evasive, changing the subject with small-town dexterity. By late afternoon, she found herself at Jenkins Hardware, where the elderly owner, Harold Jenkins, was arranging hammers on a display rack. Unlike others in town, Harold seemed willing to talk. Marcus Holloway was an odd duck, he said, leaning on the counter. Bought that store back in the 60s, but kept modifying it, adding walls, changing the layout. Folks thought he was just particular, but it was peculiar how secretive he was about the back rooms. Said they were for storage, but deliveries always came through the front. Catherine was about to ask another question when the bell above the door jingled. A distinguished man in his 60s entered, silver-haired and imposing in a tailored blazer. Harold straightened immediately. "Dr. Holloway," he greeted, his tone suddenly formal. "What brings you in today?" Richard Holloway's cool gaze swept over Catherine before returning to Harold. "Just picking up that special order doorknob for Victoria's guest room." His voice was cultured, authoritative, the voice of a man accustomed to respect. Harold hurried to retrieve a package from beneath the counter. While he was occupied, Richard turned to Catherine. "Ms. Morgan, isn't it? Our newest property owner." His smile didn't warm his calculating eyes. "I trust you're finding Millfield welcoming." "Very," Catherine replied evenly. "Everyone has been quite informative." Something hardened in Richard's expression. "Small towns thrive on gossip, but I'd caution against believing everything you hear. Some stories are just that. Stories. And others?" Catherine challenged. "Others are best left untold." He leaned slightly closer. "You should focus on getting settled, Ms. Morgan. Take your daughter sightseeing. Millfield is lovely for those who know their place." The threat beneath his cordial tone was unmistakable. After he left with his purchase, Harold returned to Catherine's side, his face drawn. "Be careful," he whispered. "Claire Reynolds didn't die of a stroke." He glanced nervously at the door. "My wife was a nurse at the hospital when Claire was brought in. There were strange substances in her blood work, but Richard Holloway altered the report and my wife was forced to keep quiet." Catherine's blood ran cold. "She was poisoned?" Harold nodded grimly. "A month after Claire died, my wife had a car accident." "Accident," he made air quotes around the word. "The Holloways own half this town, and they've got secrets they'll do anything to protect." Catherine returned to the store with a crowbar and hammer she'd purchased from Harold. With Lily safely at school for a few more hours, she was determined to examine the mysterious door more carefully. The solid oak felt different from the rest of the building's woodwork. Denser, somehow more alive. When she tapped it with the hammer, it produced a hollow sound, suggesting significant space beyond. At the base of the door, Catherine discovered scratch marks in the wooden floor, evidence that someone else had tried to pry it open from below. Following these marks, she noticed one floorboard that seemed looser than the others. When she worked the crowbar underneath, the board came up easily, revealing a small space beneath. Hidden in that gap was a sketchbook, its pages yellowed with age but still intact. Catherine's heart pounded as she recognized what must be Claire Reynolds' lost notebook. The artist's precise hand had drawn detailed studies of the door, with annotations about pressure points and an integrated locking mechanism. The final pages contained faint sketches of what appeared to be documents and photographs, with a scrawled note, "Evidence. So much evidence." Marcus documented everything. On the very last page was a brief letter. "If someone finds this, please finish what I started. The door requires two people to open, two artists, two truth seekers, one to hold, one to open, two with pure hearts." Marcus built it this way to protect his secrets from his own family. They will stop at nothing to keep it sealed. Catherine was still absorbing this revelation when her phone rang, the school principal's number flashing on screen. "Ms. Morgan, there was an incident today, and Mrs. Holloway attempted to pick up Lily, claiming to be her grandmother. We refused as she's not on your authorized list, but she became quite insistent. Lily is fine, just a bit shaken." Catherine's blood turned to ice. She rushed to the school, gathering Lily into a fierce embrace. "That lady was scary, Mom," Lily whispered against her shoulder. "She said our store really belongs to her." When they returned to the store, they found Grace waiting on the steps, her face etched with concern. "I saw Victoria here earlier," she said as they approached. "She's not a kind woman. You need help, Catherine." Before Catherine could respond, another woman emerged from the bakery next door, slender with graying blonde hair and sad eyes that immediately reminded Catherine of Claire's sketches. "This is Martha Reynolds," Grace introduced. "Claire's sister." Martha's resemblance to Claire was striking, the same delicate features and artistic hands. "Claire was close to discovering something important," she said without preamble, "and I believe that's why they killed her." Inside the store, Martha examined Claire's sketchbook with trembling fingers. "This is definitely Claire's work," she confirmed. "She was obsessed with that door in the final months of her life, said it called to her, that there was something crucial behind it that the world needed to know." Their conversation was interrupted by the front door bursting open. Joseph Holloway, Victoria's son, entered with two burly men. Unlike the nervous, rushed man Catherine had glimpsed at the auction, Joseph now exuded confident menace, his cold eyes calculating. "Ms. Morgan," he said, his voice deceptively calm, "you really should have accepted my mother's generous offer." He glanced meaningfully at Lily, who shrank against Martha. Claire Reynolds was given a similar choice. She chose unwisely. What would you do in Catherine's position? Take the money and run, or stand your ground for truth? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for the dramatic conclusion to our story. Catherine positioned herself between Joseph and her daughter. "I've sent everything I've found to my lawyer," she lied, her voice steadier than she felt. "If anything happens to me or Lily, the entire town will know what Marcus Holloway hid behind that door." Joseph's laugh held no humor. "You're playing with fire, Ms. Morgan." He revealed that his father, Marcus, hadn't merely collected blackmail evidence. He had been protecting the town from information that could destroy innocent people alongside the guilty. Evidence showing how many prominent families had built their fortunes on fraud, theft, and even murder. "My father was the middleman," Joseph explained, his voice bitter. "He helped respectable men do disreputable things without getting their hands dirty. And when some grew nervous about loose ends, he ensured he had enough evidence to keep himself alive." He looked toward the mysterious door with undisguised hatred. "That room contains enough documentation to send dozens of people to prison or the gallows, including members of my own family." "Then why not destroy it all?" Catherine asked. Joseph's admission came through gritted teeth. "We can't open the door any more than you can. My father designed the locking mechanism himself and died before telling anyone how it worked. Claire Reynolds came closest to figuring it out, but my mother and uncle had to stop her before she could expose everything." Martha's anguished cry confirmed what Catherine had suspected. Claire's death had indeed been murder. Catherine proposed a dangerous bargain. She and Joseph would cooperate to open the door using Claire's notes about the two-person mechanism. Once it's open, you'll know exactly what you're dealing with, she reasoned, and you'll realize that killing me here would bring attention you can't afford. As they debated, Grace suddenly stepped forward. "It's time to end this, Joe," she said, her voice completely transformed. No longer the kindly Baker, but something harder, colder. 50 years is long enough. She and Joseph exchanged a knowing look that made Catherine's blood run cold. Grace had been part of the conspiracy all along, likely monitoring the store, and Claire for years. With Lily safely beside Martha, Catherine and Joseph followed Claire's instructions. They located two pressure points on the door, one on the left, one on the right, about 3 feet from the floor. "We have to press simultaneously and hold for exactly 10 seconds, Catherine instructed. As they pressed, she heard a faint clicking from within the door, followed by the sound of gears turning. The ancient mechanism was still functional, engineered to last decades without maintenance. After exactly 10 seconds, there was a final click, and the door swung inward on silent hinges. The smell of papers sealed away from air, and light for years wafted out. The room beyond was smaller than expected, perhaps 8 feet square. The walls were lined with wooden filing cabinets, each drawer carefully labeled with names and dates. In the center stood a desk covered with ledgers, maps, and legal documents. But it was the far wall that made everyone stop and stare. Dozens of photographs arranged in neat rows like a gallery of evidence. Images of meetings, handshakes, and document signings showing prominent citizens engaged in activities they clearly never intended to have recorded. Below each photograph was a small placard with names, dates, and brief descriptions of the crimes being committed. The final photograph, however, froze Catherine's blood. It showed Victoria and Richard Holloway standing beside Claire's hospital bed, pouring something into her IV line. The placard simply read, "Claire Reynolds, October 15th. Problem solved." Joseph had lied about Claire's murder, but even more shocking, Marcus Holloway had somehow photographed the crime before his own death, ensuring there would be evidence of the murder sealed away in this room, waiting for someone brave enough to discover it. Grace drew a gun, aiming it at Catherine. "All of this will be buried along with you," she said coldly. Joseph, shocked by the evidence of his mother and uncle's crime, stood motionless. "Grace, this has gone too far," he protested. "Too many people have died." But Grace was beyond reason. "If this information gets out, it will destroy everything we've built in Millfield." As she prepared to pull the trigger, a voice rang out from the front of the store. "FBI, drop your weapon." Agent Angela Martinez and her team stormed in. Martha had called them while the others were focused on the door. "We've been investigating Claire Reynolds' death for 3 years," Martinez explained, "but never had enough evidence until now." In the weeks that followed, Millfield was rocked by scandal as federal investigators worked through Marcus Holloway's meticulous documentation. Victoria and Richard Holloway were arrested for Claire's murder. Grace was charged as an accomplice. Numerous local officials faced corruption charges. Joseph, who cooperated with investigators, received a lighter sentence. Catherine kept the store, transforming the ground floor into an art studio and cafe as she'd dreamed. The second floor became a cozy home for her and Lily. The secret room, once a repository of dark secrets, was converted into a small gallery featuring Claire's work and that of other local artists. 6 months after purchasing the store for $99, Catherine stood in her bustling art studio, watching Lily teach younger children how to paint. Martha Reynolds, now a dear friend, helped serve coffee. "Claire would be proud of you," Martha said, squeezing Catherine's hand. "She always believed art could heal any wound." Catherine nodded, gazing at the portrait of Claire she had painted, now hanging on the wall. "Sometimes we have to face darkness to find light," she whispered. Catherine placed a small plaque beside the front door, naming the business Claire's Art Studio in memory of the brave woman who died seeking truth. The door that had once sealed away corruption now stood permanently open, an entrance to the art gallery. When visitors came, they not only admired paintings, but learned the story of a small town that had faced its darkness and found redemption. Every locked door is an opportunity to open something new, Catherine often said when customers inquired about the building's history. Sometimes the most unexpected turns in life, a $99 store, a mysterious door, a secret needing exposure, shape us in ways we never imagined. Catherine had found not just truth, but herself. What door in your life are you standing before? And do you have the courage to open it?